Hello and welcome to the Mini Book Podcast African American Books Edition.
We're so glad you could join us.
Today we are going to be talking about a truly beautiful and I think really complex piece of work titled Black and Blues, How a Color Tells the Story of My People by Imani Perry.
It is a fascinating read. It's one of those rare books that takes a single thread, a simple color, and just pulls on it until this entire tapestry of history unravels.
It really does. It completely changes how you look at the world around you. Absolutely. But before we get into that tapestry, I just want to say that we thank you for listening and please consider subscribing for future content.
And this is really important.
Yes. After hearing this discussion, we encourage you to go out and purchase this book and support the author. Imani Perry has done just incredible work here.
And buying the book is honestly the best way to ensure we get more stories just like this. Couldn't agree more. Supporting authors is supporting the culture itself.
Exactly. Now, just for full transparency, we should mention that the voices you're hearing right now are AI generated.
But the content, the stories, and the history we're about to share comes straight from the book itself.
And we really feel that this is a great way to learn about African American history through a very unique lens.
And what a lens it is. You know, usually when we discuss African American history, the conversation is so dominated linguistically by the color black.
Right. It's the identity, the descriptor, the political banner.
But Perry makes this really specific pivot here. She asks us to view this same history through the spectrum of blue.
It's such an interesting shift because culturally, when you and I hear the blues, we usually think of sadness.
Or depression, yeah. Or the music genre.
But she seems to be arguing for something much, much more expansive. She's not just talking about mood, she's talking about the physical world.
The sky, the water, the indigo dye.
The paint on the porch.
Exactly. She defines the color early on as a witness. She actually calls blue a conjure color.
Conjure color. That's a strong phrase. Let's break that down for everyone. What does she mean by conjure in this context?
Right, because it's not some fantastical magic. In this context, conjure refers to a spiritual invocation. It means the color isn't passive.
It's active. It's doing something.
It is. It calls things forth. She suggests that blue functions as a sort of archive. It holds the memory of the people.
So it represents the North Star that led enslaved people to freedom.
And the Atlantic Ocean and the Middle Passage. And yes, the music. But it starts somewhere so intimate.
And I loved that she grounds that high-level concept in something incredibly personal right at the start. I was so struck by the description of her grandmother's house.
In Birmingham, Alabama.
Yes, not some grand historical site, just a home.
A yellow house,
Yeah.
specifically. But the heart of it was the blue bedroom.
The detail that stood out to me was the ceiling. She writes about a missing ceiling tile, this gap.
Oh, yes.
Where a drop ceiling had been installed to save on heating costs. And through that gap, you could see the original paint.
Bright, like the sky in August.
Yes, that's the phrase. Such a vivid image.
But think about the context. This is Birmingham in the mid-20th century. Outside those walls, you have Jim Crow, you have poverty, the constant threat of violence.
The world outside was hostile.
Completely. So the question Perry asks is, why blue? Why did her grandmother choose that specific shade for her sanctuary?
It wasn't just an aesthetic choice, was it? It felt like a psychological one.
Precisely. Perry argues that for Black women of that era, homemaking was a radical act. Creating beauty was a form of resistance.
So inside that blue room, her grandmother created a space of what Perry calls abundant safety.
By painting the room that color, she was effectively bringing the sky, the divine, the limbless indoors.
So if the outside world is trying to box you in, you paint your ceiling the color of the infinite. It's a shield.
It is. It changes the relationship between the person and their environment. It's claiming a piece of the universe for yourself.
Wow.
And Perry connects this very domestic moment to a much older, deeper piece of folklore. Did you catch the story from Liberia, the one about a seat?
Yes, this felt like a creation myth. It's about the separation of heaven and earth, right? But it was strange.
It is a bit surreal. In the story, Asi is a woman who loves the blue sky so much she literally starts eating it.
She consumes the blue.
Yes, and her appetite is so voracious that the gods are offended. Right. So they pull the heavens up and away, creating that vast distance between humans and the divine.
It's a heavy consequence. We lose our connection to heaven because we tried to consume it.
But there is a twist, and this is where the history comes in. As recompense for that grief, for that separation, the earth was given the indigo plant.
The plant that creates the deep blue dye.
Right. So in this cultural logic, the color blue, specifically indigo, is born out of a longing for the divine. It's a substitute for heaven.
So it's not just a happy color. It carries the weight of that original separation. It's a reminder of what was lost.
And that framework sets the stage perfectly for the darker side of this history. Because when we talk about indigo in American history, we aren't talking about folklore anymore.
No, now we're talking about commodities and slavery.
We have to talk about the economics of blue. Before synthetic dyes were invented, indigo was incredibly valuable. It was called blue gold.
And Perry makes an important distinction here about expertise, which I thought was fascinating.
That the Europeans didn't just grab random people to work these crops.
Right. She points out that West Africans had a centuries-old tradition of dyeing cloth with indigo. They were masters of the chemistry long before the slave trade.
Exactly. They knew how to ferment the plant, how to extract the pigment. It's a complex chemical process, but that expertise became a shackle.
Their knowledge made them targets.
It did. There is a harrowing story in the book that illustrates this irony perfectly. The story of the ship named the True Blue.
The name alone is gut-wrenching given the context. You almost can't believe it's real.
It is suffocating. In 1769, the True Blue was carrying enslaved Africans from Anamabu. These were likely people who knew the cultural significance of blue.
Who maybe knew that Azzy story or the dye tradition.
And they staged an insurrection on board.
They fought back.
They did. And Perry just lingers on the tragedy of being transported on a vessel named after a color of beauty and tradition, a color that signaled home, which was now the very vehicle of their erasure.
And then erasure wasn't just metaphorical. The processing of indigo literally marked the body. I remember reading about the flies and the smell, but the stain, that's what stuck with me.
It's a dirty, smelly, difficult job. The dye is so potent and it gets everywhere. Enslaved people working the indigo plantations would have the blue dye beaten into their clothes and deeply stained into their skin.
So it wouldn't just wash off at the end of the day?
Not at all. The black body becomes visually merged with the product they are forced to produce. It created a permanent visual marker.
To the slave owner, a blue-stained slave was valuable labor, a receipt of ownership.
Yes, but for the enslaved person,
Right.
that stain was so complex. It was a mark of their bondage, yes, but it was also an undeniable link to a past skill, a past life.
It's that duality again, beauty and brutality wrapped in the same shade.
That duality of the body actually leads us into one of the most complex and, frankly, one of the most misunderstood sections of the book. We have to unpack the folklore around blue gums.
Right. This is a topic that requires some careful unpacking. For listeners who haven't heard this term, the blue gum Negro was a specific figure in Southern folklore.
And a terrifying one, traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
The myth was that a black person with dark bluish gums had a bite that was poisonous.
Literally toxic, like a rattlesnake.
On the surface, it just sounds like a horrific, dehumanizing, racist lie. And it certainly functioned that way. It justified violence.
But Perry argues that if you look closer, this myth also existed inside the black community. And inside, it had a different utility.
How does a myth about being poisonous help the community? That seems counterintuitive.
Well, think about the power dynamics of the time. If you are stripped of all other forms of power, political, legal, economic argument, where do you find agency? You find it in fear.
Exactly. Perry suggests the blue gum legend was a warning. A person with blue gums was someone to be respected. You didn't mess with them.
It's almost like a superpower in a disenfranchised world. Don't cross me or I'll bite you.
Precisely. It turned a physical trait into a shield. It commanded respect in a world that offered none. And Perry contrasts this blue gum identity, which is dark, dangerous, rooted in the soil, with another color term from that era.
The blue veins.
The blue veins. We're getting into colorism and social class now.
Yes, because this refers to the other end of the spectrum, the light-skinned black elite.
The blue vein societies. These were social clubs where, legend has it, you could only get in if your skin was pale enough for the blue veins to be visible on your wrist.
That's just a brutal internal hierarchy. It's basically a paper bag test.
It is. It represents proximity to whiteness as a status symbol. So you have blue veins representing assimilation, and then you have blue-black.
Skin so dark it shines blue.
And that term is interesting because I've heard it used as an insult, but also as the highest compliment.
It swings both ways. But in the folklore, Perry discusses blue-black connects to the bad man hero. Think of the character Blue, who sings about Staggerly.
It represents an undeniable, deep African root that hasn't been diluted. It's powerful.
It really shows how the community used this single color to map out its internal tensions. But blue wasn't just used to map the body, It was used to map the spirit world, too.
Mm-hmm. We need to talk about hoodoo.
Yes, and we should be clear with our definitions here. Hoodoo is often confused with voodoo, but they are different.
Right. Voodoo is a religion. Hoodoo is Black American folk spirituality. It's root work, it's practical, it's about protection, healing.
And blue is a central tool in that toolkit. I've seen the porch ceilings in the South painted that specific pale haint blue. I always just thought it was a style choice.
It is, but the purpose is functional.
Yeah.
In hoodoo belief, a haint, a spirit, or a ghost cannot cross water.
So if you paint the ceiling blue,
You are tricking the spirit. The haint sees the blue, thinks it's water, and cannot enter the house. It's a spiritual security system.
that connects right back to the grandmother's bedroom we started with.
It's the same impulse, isn't it?
Whether it's painting the ceiling to look like the sky for psychological safety or haint blue for spiritual safety.
It's using color to create a boundary against a hostile world. Perry also mentions the blue bottle trees, cobalt bottles hung on crepe myrtle trees.
To trap spirits, right.
The belief is that spirits are attracted to the blue light, enter the bottle, and get trapped.
It's a beautiful image. And speaking of blending unlikely things, I was completely surprised by the section on George Washington Carver.
Oh, the Peanut Man.
Exactly. We learn about him as the guy who saved Southern agriculture. But Perry paints him as this mystical artist-scientist figure.
He really was a Renaissance man.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't just looking at the utility of plants. He was obsessed with their beauty. Perry highlights that Carver actually rediscovered the chemical formula for Egyptian blue.
The ancient pigment.
Yes, a pigment that had been lost for thousands of years.
Yeah.
He was in his lab, playing with local clays, and he unlocked this ancient chemistry. But what I love most is his philosophy. He didn't see science as separate from the divine. He was fascinated by the morning glory.
The blue flower that takes over everything in the South.
Right. He saw it as a teacher. He famously said, "The first thing one must learn about a sweet potato is that it is a morning glory."
That's beautiful.
He wanted to bring blue beauty to poor rural communities because he believed beauty was a necessity, not a luxury. He thought seeing the color blue could lift the spirit.
That is such a profound shift from how we usually view survival.
Yeah.
It's not just food and shelter, it's also color and aesthetics.
And that philosophy of survival through aesthetics brings us inevitably to the music. We can't talk about black and blues without talking about the sound itself.
The blues.
No.
But Perry pushes us to look past the genre labels. She asks a great technical question. What makes a song blue? It's not just sad lyrics.
No, it's physics. It's the blue note.
For the non-musicians listening, let's break that down. What exactly is a blue note?
Well, in standard Western music, you have very defined intervals between notes. Think of the keys on a piano. A blue note sits in the cracks of those keys.
It's the sound of the slide, the bend in the guitar string.
That's it. It's that dissonance that hits you in the gut, that feeling of tension. And Perry traces the origin of this sound back to Muslim West African musical traditions, specifically the adhan, or call to prayer.
So that sliding, bending vocal style survived the Middle Passage.
It survived the fields, and it became the foundation of the blues in America. We're hearing a sonic artifact of history.
It's a resistance to the rigid Western scale.
It's a refusal to stay on the note, defined by European tradition. It's an assertion of a different emotional reality. Perry points to the song Afro Blue by Mongo Santeria as a prime example.
A jazz standard.
Yes, but more than that, it represents a Pan-African connection. It's defiant, it's rhythmic, it's complex. It proves blue isn't just about depression, it's about depth.
There was one other figure in the book who seemed to embody this blue persona perfectly. A storyteller named Hugh Hill.
Ah, yes, Brother Blue. A fascinating character in Cambridge, Massachusetts, highly educated, Harvard and Yale. But he chose to reject the traditional academic path.
He became a street performer.
A street storyteller. He wore blue rags, painted butterflies on his face, and told stories in prisons and on street corners.
His signature story was about a butterfly that needs to turn inward to become itself.
He used blue as a persona to connect with people who were disregarded. He was the oral tradition in a modern city.
Turn inward to become itself. That feels like the thesis of the whole book.
It really does. Which brings us to the final and perhaps most contentious transformation of the color blue that Perry discusses.
The boys in blue. This is where the history does a complete 180.
It really demonstrates how symbols are not static. Think back to 1865. For an enslaved person, seeing a boy in blue, a Union soldier, meant salvation. Blue was the color of liberation.
But fast forward 100 years or to today, The boys in blue refers to the police.
And in many black communities, that blue uniform doesn't represent liberation. It represents containment, surveillance, and violence.
It's a total inversion.
And Perry doesn't shy away from that paradox. She points out that blue is a witness to all of it. It's the sky, which is freedom. It's the water, which is separation. The bruise, suffering. And the uniform, control.
It's all those things at once. It's messy.
And that's our point. Black history isn't a straight line. Perry describes it as a remix.
I love that concept applied to history.
It makes sense, right? Just like jazz or hip-hop samples old tracks to make something new, Black identity is constantly remixing its history.
And the blue isn't a fixed definition. It changes depending on how the light hits it.
Precisely. It's like looking through a prism.
So the question for us, and for you listening, is, how do you see blue now? Next time you look at the sky or hear a blues riff, are you just seeing a color or are you seeing a witness?
It's a provocative thought. It forces you to realize that history isn't just in books, it's in the sensory world all around us.
That is a perfect place to leave it. We hope this discussion has opened up a new perspective for you on something you see every day.
Definitely. It's a book that really stays with you long after you put it down.
Once again, this was a look into Black in Blues by Imani Perry. Please, if you enjoyed this, subscribe to our show and tell a friend. And more importantly, go buy the book. Support Imani Perry so she can keep telling these stories.
And we want to hear from you. Drop a comment and let us know what other books you'd like us to cover in future episodes. We are always looking for great suggestions.
Thank you so much for subscribing and listening. Until next time.